All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. The webinar is Ready, Willing, and Able to Work, Support for Inclusive Hiring. So Ready, Willing, and Able is a national partnership of the Canadian Association for Community Living, the Canadian Autism Spectrum Disorders Alliance, and their member organizations. In today's hyper-competitive business environment, the difference between success and failure lies in the talent and diverse skills of your workforce. There are approximately 500,000 working-age adults with intellectual disabilities, or ASD, in Canada. This untapped workforce can help address current labor shortages while making businesses stronger, more diverse, and more productive. Corinne Arsenault, Labor Market Facilitator in New Brunswick, will provide information on how employers and employees can be supported from recruitment to employment maintenance, making HR practices easier while navigating difficult times. So we're very excited to have Corinne with us this morning. First thing, I am going to go through some housekeeping. So if you have any questions for Corinne at all during any of this, please add them in the chat. So down at the bottom, you've got the chat function. You can see that Pat and myself have already written in the chat. Any questions can go in there, or you can hold them till the end. We ask that you please mute yourself during Colleen's presentation, or Corinne's presentation. Oh, I'm looking at the picture of Colleen. And then you can turn your mic back on if you have any questions at the end. Also, we are recording this session, so it will be available to be shared to any coworkers or colleagues you feel might benefit from it in the end. All right, so off to you, Corinne.
Okay, so I will share my screen to get started. And we'll do my slideshow. There. Are we good? Can you see that just fine, Tanya? Good. Okay, so I want to start this morning by saying thank you to the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity. I've attended quite a few of their webinars over the past 12 weeks, and I was just telling Tanya this morning, as somebody whose role it is to meet with employers, my job has been significantly hampered by all of the COVID restrictions, and this has been a great opportunity for me to connect with employers from my desk or my couch, depending on where I am at any given day. So we're going to start by some of the things that I wanted to cover today. Was Tanya had mentioned that RWA is a national program, and I am the labor market facilitator for New Brunswick. We have labor market facilitators nationwide, and I focus primarily on Fredericton, Moncton, and St. John, but I am available for consultation and support across the province. So today we'll talk about briefly what Ready, Willing, and Able is. What does inclusion look like in the workplace? Why does inclusive hiring make good business sense? What is the RWA model, how we work with each other, and how an employer is supported through the entire process. I'm not sure who else is on the call today, but Pat, for example, is a member of one of the agencies that I've worked with in the past. So we'll be talking about agencies and how they also help to support in this process. Okay, so diversity in the workplace. So diversity refers to people, and in this sense, a diverse workplace is one that is made up of people with different attributes. In the case of disability, some people have visible disabilities, while other disabilities, such as autism spectrum disorder, may not be apparent just by looking at the person. People with different attributes bring different perspectives and have different ways of thinking and doing things based on their unique positions or experiences. Inclusion starts with a diverse workforce, but diversity does not guarantee inclusive workplaces. Inclusion in the workplace refers to the organization or business itself and the values, the structures, and processes that are implemented in order to allow the organization to fully tap into the benefits and value that a diverse group of employees brings to the workplace. It is a culture in which diversity is woven into all aspects of an organization or business. So how do we create an inclusive workplace? And how can I help you develop these strategies for successful inclusive hiring? So an organization can become more inclusive by building awareness and understanding. And my job today is to build awareness. I am also available to come into a place of work and build that knowledge set with management, supervisors, and with staff in general. We can hire inclusive workplaces offer real work for real pay with employees with disabilities, participating in the general workforce and alongside persons without disabilities in inclusive community settings. Employment is paid at industry standard wages associated with the position and the same protections and benefits available to the general workforce. At their core, inclusive workplaces are typically flexible, creative, and collaborative. If nothing else, COVID has reinforced the benefits of being creative and flexible. And this flexibility and creativity allows businesses to tap into the full talent of their employees and maximize their performance. And every individual is different, and their support needs on the job may vary considerably from the support needs of other employees. So to create a truly inclusive workplace, we get to know the individual and learn how to tap into that person's strengths. So in keeping in mind that fostering inclusion in the workplace can start today. It's not something that requires a formal strategic plan. Think about inclusion in the workplace as an ongoing commitment, a continuous process, not a single event, but rather something that we individually and collectively work on not only in our strategic planning, but in our everyday interactions and decisions. In general, there's been much discussion around pre-COVID labor shortages. And as businesses either struggle to meet unexpected demand in the current climate or will need to face the challenges of operating in a new normal, it will be beneficial to look to non-traditional hiring practices to meet human resource needs. Now, more than ever, it's important to streamline hiring, work to train and retain employees, and to utilize expertise in the business community to help with making hiring more efficient and less stressful. So let's look at why hiring through the lens of inclusion makes good business sense for employers and organizations. So over 5 years of data from employers across Canada who rated hires through the support of RWA have yielded impressive results. And RWA has been in existence for 5 years and signed a new funding agreement in September of this past year. So there's still another about 2.5 years guaranteed of RWA supports across Canada. So that's good news. So of all of the employers that have hired through the RWA process, 88% say employees are doing as well or better than average on productivity. 94% of hires were rated better than average on punctuality and 95% better than average on attendance. 99% of employers said RWA supported employees rated as well or better than average on contributing to a positive workplace morale and attitudes towards work. 90% felt customer care performance was well or better than average as well. Employees with an intellectual disability or autism spectrum disorder through the RWA model are supported to be part of the culture of an organization. They bring innovative advantage with their diverse perspectives and both traditional and non-traditional skill sets. 97% were rated as well or better than average on turnover, and 73% reported receiving positive feedback from their clients and customers. And 92% of businesses rated their experience with Ready, Willing, and Able to be positive, and 2/3 of those businesses said that they would consider hiring through our RWA support, again, in the short term, so within the next 12 months. So just to summarize, employees with autism and intellectual disability enhance the productivity of their team. They give your team a broader base of experience and perspective. They improve workplace culture. The emphasis shifts from strengths to talents. And they fit within the 1 to 4 equity groups, which is important in a lot of organizations as far as, especially in the federal government. And more importantly, they're qualified to do the work. So RWA has operated on a model, and that is 4 parts. So number 1 is creating demand. So my job as labor market facilitator is to meet with employers, to engage on a regular basis, to highlight the advantages and the business case for hiring individuals with an intellectual or a developmental disability, and to work with the employer to determine what their needs are, what the atmosphere is in a workplace, exactly what their need is, what they're looking for, what accommodations that they may be able to put in place. So it's an ongoing process. It involves discussion, and we're not looking for somebody to create a job that doesn't already exist. Not looking for an employer to add stress to their workplace. It's simply a way of finding out what jobs are available, what is entailed with those jobs, and how can we match the best fit. Once an employer has committed to considering an employee, we then I connect to agencies in the province who support individuals with disability on an ongoing basis. You may be familiar with Jobs Unlimited or Amukto Training and Education Center, Neil Squire Society. Those are all Fredericton-based employment agencies, and they have a pool of candidates who they've worked with, most likely on a long-term basis, to develop resumes, to work on workplace skills, and have individuals who are now work ready and willing and want to add value to a workplace. So I would share any information from the employer about the demands of the job, the conditions of the working environment with the agency, and then we have a look at those candidates who are in the pool. We see who is qualified, who is interested, who doesn't face barriers with transportation, and things like that. And we can have a discussion back and forth. So an agency may say to me, is it on a bus route? So I would check with the employer, not on a bus route, but is there somebody perhaps in that area who travels? And we can make those connections. Once the hire is in place, then there is ongoing support for the employee through the agency, and continued support for the employer through myself. So we would keep in touch, and if you are experiencing any difficulties with training, typically those difficulties aren't anything that would be outside the norm for any new employee, but there's an additional level of support across the board to make sure that that hire is successful and sustainable, and saves on having to go through that process all over again. So RWA's model is designed to connect businesses to a broad pool of candidates with an intellectual disability or ASD, and once a candidate is hired, to promote fit or success on the job through providing simultaneous and complementary supports to both the employer and the candidate employee. So this is just an infographic that gives you a good idea of how we piece everything together and we work together on an ongoing basis to meet your hiring needs. So with that, I am going to show you a video And this video was done through a colleague of mine. He is my counterpart in Nova Scotia. And it just gives you a good idea of what this looks like in the workplace. In this case, it is hiring individuals with autism in the government of Canada and what that might look like. So I'll get that started. And it's just, it's about 6 minutes long, and we'll come back.
So I'm David Patterson. I am the Regional Autism Coordinator with Ready to Enable. Ready to Enable is a national all across Canada that aims to labor market participation of people with autism and intellectual disabilities by business frameworks. We had a requirement for a job that we knew was going to be very draining for neurotypical individuals. It's repetitive, it's pretty monotonous, and it requires a high degree of attention to detail. I had some personal experience with individuals on the autism spectrum, and that actually gave me the idea to say, hey, I know a group and some people who might actually be very well suited to performing this kind of work. Autism Nova Scotia is one of our partners here in Halifax area, and our remarkable partner at that. So the way it works is we create the opportunities and share them equitably with all of our partners. So Public Service and Procurement Canada are honestly one of the best inclusive employers we have ever engaged with here in Halifax. They have gone above and beyond when it comes to demonstrating what an inclusive work environment really looks like, so far as welcoming neurodiversity, creating strategies and adaptations that work for the individual employee, and really harnessing their strengths and talents.
So I recently graduated with a 4-year Bachelor of Science with a degree in math and a diploma in engineering. My communication and eye contact may not be the greatest, but I am working on it. I work downstairs on the 2nd floor doing EDRM documents, old drawings of wharves, stuff like that. And I have to move them to GC Docs, which is a new program for the Government of Canada.
I went to Gahazi. I've always been unsure about what I want to do, and that's kind of a big problem in my life. But so I actually started by taking their integrated science program the first year, and eventually decided to go on degree in physics. I thought it seemed different from other people. Like, I consider myself to be, what's the term, compulsively honest. So I mean, anytime I have a situation where I think I'm even going to be slightly I was dishonest, but saying something I don't fully believe in, it's really difficult to say it at all.
Autism Nova Scotia reaches out to people in the workforce and trying to find jobs for those who are having problems finding jobs. And that's about my social skills aren't that great. I was never a people person.
So Melinda's task right now is transferring a less user-friendly database to a more user-friendly, more comprehensive, better accessible public database that we're going to be able to use to do a quick reference on which land transactions have occurred, how did they occur, when did they occur, and she's essentially ensuring completion of all that information. The 3 people who are currently working with PSPC are an amazing example of the talent and diversity of the folks who are coming through Ready to Enable. You know, some folks need a little bit more chatty than others. Some people maybe want to focus on their work and you know, maybe not be as sociable, and that's fine. I think it really shows that you know, by looking at the strengths and their fit for the position, that, you know, we can find ways to build supports around different communication styles or different barriers that may be in place. But if you focus on fit, that's where everything else can really fall into place. We asked Autism Nova Scotia, you know, this is a neurodiverse community. What's the best way for us to make sure that we're getting the best interview, the best candidate? And they gave us a suggestion, which was that have them do a hands-on portion where they not just do something like the work, where they literally do the process of what they would be doing as part of the interview. And so we interviewed 8 candidates, and we did that for all 8 candidates. And that was actually a really great way to see their skills in action. And we're very fortunate in Nova Scotia to have groups like Autism Nova Scotia and Ready, Willing, and Able that are able to provide the expertise on how to interact with employees who are on the autism spectrum.
So it's very important for me to ensure the records are accurate, up to date as much as I can.
I get to learn about different obscure locations around Nova Scotia that some of them you probably have never even heard of before.
When I'm putting these files together to put into the online, into our database, it's kind of like detective work sometimes. Some of the old files I was doing, but there's like, where even is this? And you have very little go on sometimes.
They might have their quirks. They're a person and deserving of respect and with a lot to offer.
My biggest thing is just trying to open up people's perspectives and sharing that there is a tremendous opportunity that they should tap into for business reasons. Not just because, it's warm and fuzzy and feels good, but because there's actually a tremendous benefit to having a diverse labor force as part of your team, and there are a lot of benefits that come from that.
I definitely say thank you very much. I mean, really, they helped me get started on this path.
To other employers, I would say this. It's important to be open-minded. It's important to be flexible. And it's important to take advantage of the services that enterprises like Autism Nova Scotia offer. They're there to help you, and there's a lot of mutual benefit that can be had.
Okay, so as my colleague David said in the video, that it's important first to focus on the fit. And once the best candidate has been found, we look at how to change what has been traditionally done in your place of work to perhaps actually meet what you need. So I like to give an example of during your hiring and your training practices, are you truly meeting the job description in the way that you are carrying out those procedures? And I'll give an example of a warehouse. Typically in a hiring situation, what we're looking for is that person who, comes through the door, has great eye contact, makes good conversation, and we think, great, this is exactly what I'm looking for. But in fact, what you're looking for is somebody who can go into a warehouse, do a repetitive task day in, day out, put their head down, get that job done. So are we really set up to hire an individual that would best suit our needs, or are we kind of doing business the wrong way and ending up with somebody who may be perhaps best suited to work with our customers at the cash? And my job is to come in and talk to employers about exactly what it is that you're looking for and what processes can we put in place to make sure that that is exactly what you get. So with that, we'll look at some of the promising practices that can be gradually integrated into your hiring procedures and highlight some of the areas where I can provide you with the information and support to achieve that goal. And as you could probably gather from the video that you just watched, disability is on a spectrum, and it comes in many shapes and sizes. It comes to varying degrees, and it's important to have a look at those individuals and what jobs you have available, especially now with the crisis with COVID and trying to get back up and running. You want to make sure you're making the best decisions to fit those jobs so you don't have to go back and revisit that in the next month or a year, or hopefully for years to come. So one of the ways that Ready, Willing, and Able supports employers is through an online inclusive hiring set of modules, and those are free for employers. So if that is something that you might be interested in for either yourself or your staff, just let me know and I can hook you up with that. Sometimes this is something that employers have a look at before they get involved in inclusive hiring practices, and other times perhaps they already have individuals who are in their workplace and they would be interested in opening up more positions. They want to have a better understanding of really what it means to be inclusive. Other ways to make sure that you are inclusive and you are hiring the best fit for the position is to have a look at the job description. So is your job description clear? Is it comprehensive? Is it results oriented in that it is something that truly highlights exactly what you would like for that position? Or is it something that's kind of generic? So ensure that the job description addresses the essential requirements of the job and don't include responsibilities that are not essential to the role. In my experience, I find a lot of individuals, especially those who like to follow rules and procedures, which is the kind of employee that everybody wants to have, they look and they see, must be able to do this. And while it's not really a requirement of the job, they see that that is absolutely necessary, and it excludes them from even applying for the job. It's very difficult to get across to them that an employer sometimes has their wish list and is looking for perhaps 80% of that, but they see those tasks as must-haves, and it eliminates them from applying for jobs that they are actually highly qualified for. Does your job description include inclusive language? And consider using additional information or hidden aspects of the job. So sometimes that is, what is the culture of your organization? So have you clearly defined that you value social issues, because those things can be of great importance to people. And if they don't feel like a job may be flexible or inclusive in nature, it might also exclude very qualified individuals from even having a look. Pre-screening. A lot of larger organizations now are using ways of kind of narrowing down their candidate base. And in the process, what they're doing is they are screening out individuals who would be highly qualified for the actual job. They're set up a lot of the times to be more for more high-level professional type roles. So if you're using pre-screening under those conditions, that's great. But if you are using online complicated processes that analyze personality, and what you really want is somebody to pick up shopping carts and bring them back and clean off the handles, you're screening out somebody who maybe doesn't have excellent technological skills. And that really isn't something that you're looking for in that particular role anyway. In the interview, can you offer information to help the candidate prepare for the interview in advance? So for example, if you have somebody who has autism and they are anxious in situations, they find it difficult to answer questions in high pressure situations. Could you maybe offer the interview questions in advance? Because an interview is not meant to be a trick. It's meant to be a conversation between an employer and employee to find out, really, are you best suited? What are your qualifications? Considering alternatives to the standard job interview is another option. Some people do very well with phone interviews. Some people do not. Some people excel in a situation where they have somebody, perhaps their agency support person, or somebody that they may already know in the organization, who sits in on the interview with them and can help kind of ease the tension or prompt for a better conversation. Be open to providing the candidate with the opportunity to have their job coach or support person accompany them. That's just what we talked about. And keep in mind how the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder or an intellectual disability impact the ability to sell yourself. And that goes back to perhaps if that person isn't able to make eye contact and get out all of the words, that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't highly qualified to do the job. So in your interview situation, are you really teasing out the qualifications, or are you weeding out the qualified? So consider the whole applicant before the interview, and that is where both the agency and myself can fit in. That is where that discussion about, here is this candidate, they would be excellent at doing this role, and here's where their strengths, and here's where they can benefit your organization, here's where they may struggle, here is what we can do to help both them and you if that struggle manifests itself in the workplace. Ensure that questions are clear, short, and straightforward. I know we've all been in an interview. I was in an interview once where after some great discussion about how do you network, how do you raise funds, can you write funding proposals, I was asked, please describe, how would you describe the color blue to somebody who is blind? That's kind of those are vague questions. They're difficult to answer at the best of times. So somebody with an intellectual disability or ASD is going to struggle with questions like that. So we want to make sure that you are setting them up for success and that you are able to get the true answers that you're looking for. If your job does not require that your individual or your employee makes consistent eye contact, in the interview process, we maybe relax a little bit and allow that individual to avoid eye contact. And in some cases, we ignore repetitive behavior that is oftentimes a result of anxiousness or nervousness, or again, wouldn't significantly impact their day-to-day duties. And again, onboarding. So onboarding sets the tone for success in an organization. It's that initial training process. And so I would work with organizations to make sure that onboarding a new hire is done in a way that adds to the chances for success. So you may want to consider group versus individual onboarding. And want to clearly define and describe the responsibilities, break down orientation into small tasks, don't forget to provide them with larger picture perspectives, do your best to avoid vague instructions, and where possible be as specific as possible. And as labor market facilitator, I'm more than happy to sit down and have some discussion to provide some tips and strategies about the best way to do this. And I think it's important to keep in mind that everything that we are talking about today as they relate to individuals with intellectual disability or autism also apply to everybody in your workforce. I know that you have all hired individuals before and thought this is not working out. I've told them over and over and over what to do, and it ends up not being successful, and that employee is either quits because they're not satisfied, or you don't keep them around for the long term. But these tips and strategies, many employers that I work with say, you know what, this worked with the majority of my staff. So it really improves your hiring process across the board. So we want to establish routines and plans for when routines change. That's particularly important with an individual with autism. And the benefits of hiring somebody through Ready, Willing, and Able, having my support, having the support of an agency, is that you already know that this individual who has come on board perhaps struggles with changes in routine, but we have a plan in place that helps to figure out, what do I do when today something has happened, how do I approach this, and how do I make sure that everything continues to run smoothly? So we want to ensure that communication exchange occurs. We want to provide candidates with a way to request support. We want to provide them with support that is necessary. And we want to engage and collaborate with the agency, and a job coach maybe. And we want to make this process supportive and collaborative. So we want to build in opportunities for all staff to receive disability awareness training. So either through the RWA online modules or a presentation that I would be happy to provide to your staff. We want to build natural supports in a workplace. We want to encourage that the development of those natural supports. Costco, for example, uses a buddy system. Other places have, somebody who is designated as the person. If you are struggling, this is the person that you go to and they will help you out. There's a clear process in place for where do I go for help. And a job coach can facilitate the development of a natural support network. And that is different from natural supports. Natural supports occur with those employees that are already in your place of work. In some instances, individuals require a little bit more additional accommodation. And if that is something that is able to work within your workplace, we would have had a discussion about that long before the individual is hired. You would know that this individual would benefit from having a job coach, and the job coach would basically come to work, would learn the tasks, and would support that individual to become independent. So a job coach can be in the very short term. It can be a long-term process. The goal, though, is to have the individual learn the job, fade out the job coach, and have the individual become as independent as possible. And in most cases, if not all, the employee learns the job and a job coach is no longer required. However, if there perhaps is an opportunity for promotion or to move to a new department, and this individual you feel would be a great fit and might require a little bit of extra support, we can have another conversation again and perhaps bring that job coach back in order to learn the new responsibilities. And job coaching supports are put in place based on the expertise of the agency that supports that individual. The agency looks after the hiring and the training, fading out of the job coach, and there are no additional financial requirements on the part of the employer. So this is a process that is funded through the New Brunswick government. And so it's just basically how does that look in your workplace, and being aware of what the job coach's responsibilities are and keeping in contact with you to let you know where we stand in that process. And another area of support is in communication. So sometimes we have individuals who struggle with communicating or who may be nonverbal, and there's support available by both myself and perhaps the agency supports to let you know what is the best way to communicate with the employee that you have, and how do we put the proper training in place with both your employees that are existing and with your new hire, and how do we communicate with each other, and how do we make this be successful. Okay, so I kind of, we have all kinds of success stories, individuals who have been hired in workplaces and how that came about. But when I was trying to pick one kind of thought to leave you with today, I thought if I focus just on an employee and their experience, then really we're no longer talking about inclusion, because inclusion is people who just seamlessly fit in, and have differences, yes, have challenges, yes, but everybody does. So this is a little video that was put together by New Brunswick Association for Community Living, and that is my host organization. I work for a national program, but I work out of and for the offices of New Brunswick Association for Community Living. So this is a little video that highlights employers, staff here at NBACL, individuals in community, those who are employed, family members, and it's kind of just a way to leave you with the thought that people come from various walks of lives, have various strengths, have various disabilities, and we can all come together and we can all work and we can make our workplaces better, more productive, and overall just more reflective of what our world looks like. So hopefully get this to play. I can be wrong. My own beliefs are in my soul. The thinker, the drama, and then makes no difference what group I'm in. I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. There is one who can accept the dream, one for living with the bad, one trying to be a skinny one, different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Sha, sha. We all say whatever you hate me, and then yeah. Where the devil like a shot, where a being such a rich one that will not let the moon, one different strong, all different folks, and so on and so on, and Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Corinne.
Oh, you're welcome.
A great presentation. Very much, I know me, myself, understand the program a lot better now, and I hope that those listening and watching feel the same way. If anybody has any questions, please just ask your question. You can turn your mute off at this point, and go ahead.
Corinne, it's Pat. I just want to say thank you so much for your presentation. And I just want to mention something that I've observed in the last little while. Part of what I do is job developing. So I meet with employers in the community, work with Corinne, with some of our clients. We do share some clients. And right now we need to be extremely creative. So one of the job opportunities that wasn't around before COVID, that a lot of our clients can do and agencies need as they begin to open up to staff and public and that kind of stuff, is someone to maybe pre-screen as they come into the agency, someone maybe to clean and sanitize, right? So it requires sometimes a little thinking out of the box to come up with positions for people, but when you're creative, it's possible. And I thought that this time would be awful for me as a job developer, but actually I've got an amazing amount of people employed in the last couple of months. So anyway, thanks so much for sharing about that program. It's a great presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome, Pat. And I'm finding the same. I was extremely worried when COVID hit what this was going to mean, but I am finding that there are more and more tasks that are required now that are very suited to those individuals that we support. Things like grocery pickup, for example. So everybody who is calling in and picking up their grocery order, that has greatly increased the demand to have individuals in a grocery store who take the list and just simply walk around and fill out the order and drop it off. So part of my role too, going into places of employment, is talking to you about what other places of employment are doing, what jobs they've needed to create, and what type of individuals does best in those places of employment. So it's an information sharing, not just about the individuals that are looking for work, but about trends in the industry, what other organizations in other provinces across Canada are doing to meet needs and to try to navigate our way through these really, really difficult times. Now more than ever, it is really important to be smart about hiring the right employee for the job. We want to eliminate as much time as possible spent in that process for employers. So I have my contact information on the screen here. So I am more than happy to come into your place of employment, well, virtually right now, come into your place of employment and have a discussion about how I can help you navigate through the hiring process.
I just want to read this comment to you before we wrap up. It says, I'm the parent of an autistic adult who is presently looking for work and is working with you. I won't mention the name. I have a much better understanding of what you do. Their child has a job interview today, and they are very grateful to work with you and everything that you do. So I think that right there is just a
You know who that is?
That right there is a testament to what you guys do, and I think it's very important, and thank you so much. This presentation has been recorded and will be available to be shared, and I hope that you guys will be able to use it in your